Hey guys, so I want to talk to you about some things that I wish I knew before I had a service dog. This is not to change your mind about getting a service dog by any means, but this is just things to help you be prepared for whenever that time does come in your life. So having a service dog is like having a helpful toddler with you all the time, which that kind of sounds like not the best thing, but it really is helpful. There are certain things that she can do that no one else can do for me. She can tell before I have panic attacks. She can calm me down whenever I'm having a panic attack. She can sense whenever I'm dissociating. So there are a lot of benefits of having a service dog, but it still is like having someone to care for. And so what I mean by that is anytime we go out to eat, I have to make sure that I bring like a little pad for her to lay on. I have to make sure, of course, that we always have boots if it's too hot or cold. I have to make sure that we take plenty of time for exercise before we go anywhere to get a little energy out, because she is only 4. So, we're still at that stage. I'm sure that'll change as she gets older, but, for the majority of your service dog's life that they're working, they are going to have energy that's going to need to be done something with prior to working, most likely, depending on what you're doing. I mean, if you're going and just going to be busy all day, that's one thing. But if you're going to work, to school, out to eat, anywhere, they're going to have to just be basically laying and not doing anything. You have to take time to get that energy out. So for us, that looks like usually going to a park. We used to have a soccer field in our neighborhood, so we would just go to the soccer field before and just throw the ball, like for 15 minutes or something. Because you can't expect them to work if they're all wound up and have a ton of energy. They're not going to be able to focus. So that's something to consider. And also just having the things, like having to have the boots, having to have the mat with you, having to have the water bowls with you, all of the things that you just have to have with you all the time in case you need them. So something to consider. I'm editing this video and I realized I didn't mention something. So I take Fairby's boots off whenever we go places and she has to settle. So I put them on her sometimes before we get in the car. Like I'll put them on her and let her ride in the car with her boots on, but she doesn't really like to sit with them. So if we're gonna go a farther distance, then I won't put them on until we get to where we're going. And if we go to like a restaurant or a business meeting, anything where she's gonna have to settle for a while, then whenever we get inside of the building where like she's gonna have to settle and lay down, at that point I'll take her boots off. So then I have to put them back on her. But obviously do what's best for you and your service dog, but just for her, she doesn't like to lay in them. So I'm not gonna ask her to like settle whenever I know she doesn't like to lay in them. You know what I mean? And I don't feel like that's something she should have to get used to. So that is extra time and just an extra thing to consider. Anytime that Fairby and I are out and I'm having a good health day, we do training. If it is a bad health day, then obviously she's working. But we don't go out every single day. So whenever we do go out and I'm having a good day, I try very hard to work on training with her, and I really recommend that you do that too, even if it's just maybe practice 1 or 2 tasks, maybe practice downstay, anything at all, whatever would be, a task or a thing your service dog needs to work on. Always practice it, no matter what, even if your service dog is trained, so to speak, because training never ends. That kind of brings me to another point about program dogs. A lot of times people get a dog from a service dog training program and they expect that it's going to be completely trained. And yes, they should be mostly trained, right? But the thing is, because there is that change in handler, so you're gonna have a learning curve. And if you don't go to a program where they allow you to spend time with the dogs, like I know certain types of service dog organizations, service dog training organizations will have you actually come and stay for like, a few weeks or a month to get used to everything. But if you don't get a program dog like that, where you're actually going with them, then you are gonna have to do some training on your own to make sure that you and the dog communicate well. It doesn't mean the dog isn't a good worker, and it doesn't mean they're not able to do the tasks and things they need. It's just that you have to actually train them too. You know what I mean? Like you have to train them to work with you, which is personally why I think that I will always train my own service dogs because of that, because you have to train them anyway. So unless there's just like a behavior thing where you need someone to intervene, I'm a big advocate for owner training. So that's just my personal opinion on that. Obviously, there are people who are not in a position to train their service dogs. And a great example of this is guide dogs. If you need a guide dog, then there's chances, really, really good chances that you are already vision impaired, right? So you're not going to be able to train them in the same way that, you know what I mean? So case by case, but for my personal disabilities that I have, I think that it's gonna always be a thing that I'll train my own service dog. Another big thing is the financial commitment. So of course you do have the financial commitment of just having a pet in general. So depending on the size of your service dog, you're going to have different costs for food and vaccines because those things vary by weight typically. But then you're also going to have the additional things that you have with a service dog, which is going to be your gear. So they should be wearing boots if it's, depending on where you are. I won't say they should be wearing boots, but depending on where you are, you may need your dog to wear boots. So you're going to need to replace those periodically. And the ones that we get, we have to replace them about once a year. Maybe if we're doing a lot of walking, maybe twice a year if we're walking on like concrete a lot, but you have to work that into your budget. Of course, having your gear in good working order. And by the way, you don't have to have your service dog labeled, but personally, I find it better if my service dog is labeled. I feel like we get less trouble. I feel like less people like stop and try to be like, you can't have a dog in here. If I just have her labeled, it's just easier. So you have to make sure that you have a budget for that if it's something you want. And no matter what, you will have to have a budget for things like collars, leashes, obviously food, any type of travel supplies that you need for them, poop bags, travel mats, anything like that. A lot of these things can be like maybe one-time purchases, like the travel bed and the travel bowls and stuff. Those might be more one-time purchase things, and some gear might be a one-time purchase too. But just like you have different clothes, you might want to have different patches or different vests or different things for your service dog. So might be something to think about. So depending on if you are training your own service dog, or if you are getting a program dog, or if you're getting a dog, going to train it partially and then use a trainer to help you some, you really need to kind of look at worst case scenarios for whatever route you're going before you get your service dog. Because if you get a program dog, it can be like $20,000 to $50,000 depending on where you go, right? Or of course you can do a combination of owner training, which is what I did, and that's going to be significantly less money because you'd only enlist a trainer on places you get stuck. And if you are owner training, I make a psychiatric service dog training book now, and so it lists all of the different tasks, the ways to actually train this. Like, it's actually got step-by-step on how to train these things, all kinds of really great stuff for psychiatric service dog. So I'll link that for y'all. And then of course I also make the service dog training planner, and that is for any type of disability that you are training your own service dog for. It has everything from socialization, tasks, tricks, enrichment ideas. It has a ton of different things. So I'll be sure to link both of those for you below. Another thing to consider is the time commitment. So the time commitment, of course, you're gonna have training that's ongoing forever, but that first little bit up front, if you are training your own service dog, you are gonna spend a ridiculous amount of time training. And that is the trade-off. You're gonna save money, but you're gonna spend a lot of time. So, just be prepared for the time commitment. And whenever we were training, when we were like only doing training, I would try to go out maybe 3 times a week, and I would try to do durations in different locations for anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. You don't want to burn your dog out though, so that's a really important thing. And the other thing is, just because you're not out training somewhere doesn't mean you're not training whenever you're at home, right? Because we're always training. Whenever we open the front door to go outside, that's a training opportunity. You can have them sit and wait for the door to be opened. You can also have them do things like lay beside your chair whenever you're eating, and just them get under the table, whatever, anything at all that would benefit you. Basically, in the real world, having a service dog, you can train for that stuff at home too on days that you're not going out and training. Just be sure to not burn your dog out and train too much too quick. That's why I said for us, I feel like we did maybe 3 days a week and anywhere up to 30 minutes. It wasn't like 30 minutes of like straight up training the whole entire time. It would be maybe we're gonna sit here and do some screensaver training and sit in one spot for 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Maybe we do some puppy push-ups and just be around the environment and get used to distractions. Just be careful not to burn your service dog out before you even get started. And if you feel like they're not wanting to learn that day or they're not getting something, take a step back, stop, go home. Just let them be a dog. Everybody has bad days. Don't give up on them, but also respect that. You know what I mean? And also give them something easy to end on. So if they're doing a really shitty job at everything, have them do something they know to do, like really, really good, even if it's like sit or shake or spin, whatever. Have them do that, end on a positive note, and leave. Take the day off and start over. I promise. You're gonna cause yourself more stress and more burnout by worrying about it than you will if you're just like, today's not our day. We'll start tomorrow. Daily exercise and mental stimulation for your dog. So this is so important. So obviously your dog is a living being, so they are gonna need to do things all the time. So just because you're not going out or you're having a bad health day doesn't mean they are. So you need to provide plenty of physical activity for them. You know, this can be throwing a ball, this can be going for a walk, whatever you're up to. I understand that every single day we may not be able to do these things, and that's okay, no shame. But you do need to provide some type of enrichment. So any type of mental enrichment is great. Puzzles, sniffy games, even just trick training, just any type of enrichment at all will really help them to just be able to settle and decompress and just be a better dog. Depending on what type of service dog you get, you may have grooming expenses. So if you go with anything with a long coat, obviously you're gonna have grooming expenses. And if you're just a person who either doesn't want to actually groom your own dog or you physically can't, then you will have grooming expenses involved, because if you have a service dog, they're obviously going out into public and stuff, and so you have to keep them clean. Even if they're a dog that has really short hair and you're like, well, you know, they're not really getting dirty, you still have to keep them clean and bathe and blow out their coat if they have a coat that needs that, just to make sure that they are not just disgusting and smelly in a store. So there is going to be a grooming time commitment or a financial commitment, just depending on what type of dog you get. So let's talk about public interaction. I don't think there's anything that can really legitimately prepare you for this. I can tell you can watch all the YouTube videos you want. It's not the same until you get out there in it. Honestly, the majority of interactions that we have are positive. I've only had one person ever be rude to us, but the amount of people who will just so nicely be so excited about you having a service dog or about seeing a dog or whatever, and will come up and talk to you. And depending on the type of day you're having and depending on how busy you are and stuff, this might be fine. But there are some days that maybe you have somewhere to be and maybe you can't stop and talk for 20 minutes to 5 different people, you know what I mean? But maybe you can. And also there might be days where no one says anything to you at all, but there might be a day where like 5 people stop you. So it really depends on the day. I think it depends on the area where you are. I think it depends on a lot of different things. I think it depends on just the actual people, you know what I mean? Like the individual people. So I can tell you in my area, oh, I never have a problem. But the thing is, I might tomorrow because a new person comes out, you know what I mean, who I haven't seen before. So I don't think it matters where you are. I truly don't think it matters how you have your service dog labeled. I do think if you have your service dog labeled, it does matter. I find that I have less interactions with everybody whenever she is labeled. I do find that. I have less people coming up asking about her. I have less people in the store asking about her. It's a lot less interaction. So for that reason, I recommend labeling. You don't have to though. But if she goes out and she is vested and we have the typical like service dog, do not distract type patches all over, we still might have a few people who will say something. Typically it'll be like, I know I'm not supposed to, but she's just so cute. Stuff like that. Also, if you interact with somebody, if you pass somebody, I guess, who has recently lost a pet, a lot of times people who have recently lost dogs will want to come up and talk to you and talk to your dog, or just talk to you and tell you about their dog. And so just be prepared for that, because it does happen. I don't know how many people I've had do that, really. A lot of people do that. You also will hear, my cousin has a service dog, or I have a service dog, but I don't bring them with me everywhere. You hear different stuff, which maybe they do, but you definitely hear some really interesting things. Depending on if you go places where there's a lot of kids, I do notice that kids are really, really loud about the service dogs. They're very like, mom, puppy, and they're so excited about it. But I do notice that if there's a group of kids and there's a kid that seems to be like school age, it seems, I have noticed that little kids that age are like, we're not supposed to talk to service dogs and stuff. So I don't know if it's something that's in the education system where they're like educating these kids. I don't know if it's been on a cartoon or something. I'm not sure, but I have heard little kids, like 7-year-olds, like telling the little siblings and their parents both that they're not supposed to talk to service dogs. So here, come here. Come back over here. I think she licked it. Yeah, and this kind of brings me to personal boundaries. So personal boundaries, this can be whatever you want for your dog. So some people don't let anyone at all interact with their service dog. I think it depends on the service dog and how comfortable you are. So for me, I don't want anyone to interact with Fairy because she really likes people a lot. And so if I let her do that, then she kind of, I thought she was gonna say something. Okay, we can go potty. So it's up to you what you feel comfortable with. And if you know that your dog can still task, even if they greet people occasionally, then that's okay. That's your rules for your service dog. But one thing to keep in mind is your rules for your service dog are not other people's rules for their service dog. So make sure you have realistic expectations. So a service dog can greatly help you and it can make a huge improvement for your life, but it's not gonna be like a solution to everything. So just make sure that you understand what your service dog is actually gonna be able to do for you. And understand that you may still need other support too. So just because you have a service dog and they're helping you in the ways that they're helping you, it doesn't mean that you're not gonna still need medication, for example, or support from another person. So just make sure that you're really setting those expectations realistically. That way you don't set yourself up for disappointment or burn your dog out. I think I kind of mentioned this about the helpful toddler part, but just keep in mind that it is a all the time commitment. So yes, you have them with you whenever you go out, right? But they're still with you at home and they still need stuff. And so it is a 24-hour a day, however many year commitment, you know, and you don't want to work your dog until the day that they die, of course. And then you have your little bit of time at the front where you're training. So you figure you're going to start having them work whenever they're maybe 2. We're just going to use that as a ballpark. By the way, there is no set amount of time, but we're just going to use 2 years old for a typical service dog to start working. So if you have them from the time they're 2, and then you want to retire them around the time that they're, depending on the breed, we'll say 8 years old, maybe a little bit older, maybe a little bit younger, then you're gonna have 6 years of working, and then you're probably gonna have 10 years additional, 8 to 10 years additional of just having a dog. And that's something to consider too. So what happens after your service dog retires? Before you get a service dog, I would make sure that you had a kind of a retirement plan. That's something that a lot of people, I don't feel like, think about. You think about getting it, but then you don't think about, well, it's not going to work until its dying days. You know, it's going to probably retire at some point, maybe around 8 years old or so. I think that's a pretty good list to start with. So like I said, I will link those resources below for you. There is a free download, and then there's a few things from my shop that I'll link to that are really super helpful if you are training your own service dog, especially if you're training your own psychiatric service dog. So thanks for hanging out with us. I hope this was helpful, and we will see you soon. Bye guys.